I should have said this before I hit record, but I've already had so much B Corp certified cheese. Like I got a bunch of cheese and I thought I would space it out throughout the couple of days. I'm not saying I ate it all over the weekend, but the reason I haven't gotten any of the Ben and Jerry's ice cream yet is because I'm afraid I'm just going to power through it.
That's fair. I would too. So definitely no shame in it. Cheese and ice cream are big fans.
And then all the B Corp coffee to offset it.
Hmm.
This is critical.
Yeah, and then at the end of the day, it's B Corp beer. So
All about maintaining that homeostasis.
yep. Vote with your dollar.
Yeah, totally should have waited to hit record.
You want to stop the recording and start it again?
No, this is perfect. I'll just edit it out. I'll leave that for the bloopers.
Okay.
God knows there's enough bloopers. Cool. All right. Hey, everybody. Nick from Good Impacts. And on our first day of the 0 to 80 in 80 campaign, we're really focusing on the governance section of the BIA, of the B Impact Assessment. So I've got my friend and colleague Alice from Good for Michigan here to talk a little bit about this section of the BIA and to help me think through how good impacts can increase our score. And really internalize some of the lessons of this section in our business model as we go forward. So Alice, would you tell the nice folks a little bit about Good for Michigan and about the awesome work that you do?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. My name is Alice Jasper, and I work with. Sorry, 1 second. The dogs. Got more blooper reel. I don't know if you want to do the intro again. All right. Just pick up where I left off.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for having me on, Nick. My name is Alice Jasper, and I work with an organization called People First Economy. One of our programs at People First Economy is Good for Michigan. And what we do with Good for Michigan is partner with our friends over at B Lab, which is the nonprofit that certifies B Corps, and work closely with them and with sort of the national and even kind of global community of B Corps and other stakeholders in that are advocating for best practices and using business as a force for good. So we are considered Michigan's B Local. And that's kind of the name for that partnership. And B Locals exist around the country in the US and Canada. And we're really here to kind of support businesses that are interested in B Corp certification, support them through that process wherever we can, and also to kind of convene and help to engage our state's B Corps in building community and collaboration with each other with this national and global movement, as well as kind of working on place-based opportunities to have change and really just kind of finding some of that solidarity with other businesses and understanding best practices and learning from and with one another. At Good for Michigan, in addition to our helping B Corp specifically, we also have a campaign called the Good for Michigan campaign, which invites businesses to engage with the same B impact assessment that companies take for B Corp certification, as well as the United Nations SDGs or Sustainable Development Goals. Both of those assessments are housed on the same platform. And this allows companies in Michigan of all shapes and sizes to kind of engage in these global standards of best practice in sustainability. And our role at Good for Michigan is to help folks through that assessment process to kind of benchmark and normalize their social and environmental impacts and measuring those, and to utilize those global best practices and kind of help to create place-based approaches for them. So we work with companies in taking the assessment, celebrating their wins, which I think is a really important thing that tends to get left out, in addition to helping businesses to identify opportunities for setting goals and next steps. and working to kind of connect them with resources that can help them implement the goals that they're working towards. We also do things to celebrate companies like our, excuse me, my cat is really eager to just be here on this call right now. Excuse me, she's knocking things over. Um,
That's why I'm
sorry,
in the office instead of doing this from home.
it's just a thing, you know, it's just the pandemic life.
As a quick aside, Alice, I
Yeah.
had yeah, I think it was last week, you know, that first stream of consciousness draft of a lengthy email that you certainly intend to go back and refine so you don't look like an insane person. And my cat definitely ran across the keyboard and just, yeah, sent the, which
Cool.
prompted, you know, me to have to send the, hey, sorry, that was my cat, which doesn't make you sound any less crazy.
Yeah, my cat only comes out for Zoom calls, so that's really convenient. Anyway, yeah, so with as a B local, we're here to help the B Corp community in Michigan and kind of work collaboratively with other B Corps and B Corp leaders around the world, and then to kind of help apply that place-based Michigan lens to these kind of global practices. And our Good for Michigan campaign is free to get engaged in or to engage in. And we will support companies through the process of measuring and improving their goals and celebrating those as well. We have things like the Good for Michigan Awards, and we do other kind of shout outs to elevate and celebrate the work that companies are doing, whether it's through B Corp or they're just kind of starting out on their sustainability journey. We really try to work to meet people where they're at. So that's the Good for Michigan program. And yeah, that's why we're super excited to be here and kind of support you, Nick, and your 0 to 80 sustainability, you know, initiative, fort building, cheese and ice cream eating
All the
event.
priorities. Yeah, I can definitely use some support, Alice. I took the governance section earlier today, had I think 15 questions that I was prompted to answer based on you know, my industry, company size, revenue, things like that. So I walked away with a resounding 0 points, which was, you know, a little disheartening, but then really reading back through the questions, seeing so many opportunities to both improve the score and to create some of those fundamental documents for the health of any small business. Really identifying and shouting to the rooftops a mission statement and having a code of ethics and a plan for transparency. So yeah, how have you advised, how would you advise other small and mid-sized businesses that are looking at that governance section for the first time? What's the right sort of mindset for them to be in when they take that section?
Yeah, I think it's important to spend some time with those questions, especially if you are a smaller, mid-sized business. A lot of those questions, I think, can be kind of tailored for some bigger companies. That doesn't mean that you have to be a bigger company in order to be a B Corp. And, you know, I don't know if we mentioned this before, but there's, you know, over 70 different tracks of the B impact assessment. So once you created your profile, Nick, there's, you know, 70 different kind of routes that you can take based on the industry and size of your company that you selected when you created that profile. So it's definitely not a one size fits all assessment. It's really made to kind of be a tailored approach and a tailored assessment for each business and their own kind of model, shape, and size. But there are still some questions within the governance that can seem like they're only applicable to large corporations, and that doesn't have to be the case. Sometimes, you know, if you're going through the assessment, you'll see kind of on each question, there's examples that you can click on, and sometimes those will help to provide a little bit of context. Um, Also, if there's anything that, you know, we can ever help answer, please feel free to reach out. But I think it's also important to sometimes think creatively, and it's okay to not shy away from innovative approaches. B Corp and the certification is constantly evolving, you know, based on some of the practices that existing B Corps have kind of pushed B Lab to evolve to serve and accommodate. So, you know, Nick, we had talked a little bit earlier about you know, creating kind of an advisory committee with some of your colleagues in national spaces, and you know, kind of our partnership between our organizations. And I think that solidifying spaces like those to demonstrate that you kind of created practice and or policy around that third party accountability, that's really going to be the key. Is just making sure that you're creating some formal space for stakeholders, for the folks that are affected by your business, your community, you know, the you know, folks that are stewarding our natural resources, making sure that you're having that kind of accountability there, especially for, you know, the smaller the smaller and mid-sized businesses. Um, there's also going to be some different parameters if you are in other states where, as in where benefit corp legislation is a thing, which it is not in Michigan. We're still one of the kind of handful of states in the country that does not have benefit corp legislation. And so it does prohibit a lot of kind of legal action or frameworks that your company can incorporate into itself that would kind of get you some of those points. Um, yeah.
Yeah, and we can dive into what that mission lock question on the assessment looks like for Michigan businesses in a second. But I really appreciate what you just said, Alice, and it's great for me to be reminded that there's only 3,000, maybe 3,500 at this point B Corps around the world, and there's 32 million small businesses in the US. It's such a fraction of businesses, and B Corp has really only seen, they haven't really seen that many businesses go through this process. And so much of it is, unlike a financial audit, which people might be familiar with, the numbers are what they are. You turn in the spreadsheet and that's it. The BIA is much more about make a statement about your practices, show your practices, and then defend those practices. That makes it sound a little too adversarial, but essentially B Corp must be, or B Labs rather, must be running into things all the time that they've never seen before. And so it's really about how can you explain your structure to them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the ways that, you know, B Lab and B Corp certification itself has evolved in the last few years, I think really demonstrates, you know, something that I've always really appreciated about B Lab is that it's certainly not perfect. No huge organization is going to be, but um, they're very willing to learn and continue to move forward and hear from their community and their partners and their businesses on ways to continue to create more space for more business owners, for more folks to become a part of this work. And so it is really valuable to you know, to be able to kind of help move that forward and to be a part of that evolution process. And um, yeah, many different types of businesses that are currently B Corps could not have been just a handful of years ago. So don't be shy to kind of push forward a little bit if you feel like there are ways that you're doing or performing things within the assessment questions that maybe aren't reflected very literally in the language that you're seeing. Sometimes one of the ways that we try to help folks is just to kind of translate how those questions apply to each businesses and their unique models. So there's definitely room to kind of express that innovation there. And I think that those are the things that really makes B Corp certification more valuable over time.
When I look at the BAA, I'm just now realizing this. I'm automatically transported back to school, in a very like fill in the right answer and there's a right answer. And that's really not what the BIA is. It's the start of a dialogue between the small business and B Labs. And there is opportunity for give and take and learning on both sides.
Yeah, it's a great learning tool. I think folks kind of see it as it has to just be to become B Corp certified. Like if you sign up to take the assessment for free, that means that you've already like signed some contract that you must become certified, and that's certainly not the case. Both the SDG tool that's hosted there, as well as the B impact assessment, are really designed to be um, kind of aspirational. And we work with a lot of businesses who are maybe just starting up, or it's kind of the reason that we have the Good for Michigan campaign. It doesn't have to be B Corp or bust. We're certainly there to support you if that's what you're hoping to do. It's also to, for some folks who are maybe just opening a business, they might not have been open for very long, but they go through the assessment because they know that they want to have a business that aligns with their values moving forward. So they can kind of keep some of these practices and policies that are recommended, or kind of, that they're seeing on the assessment that maybe weren't on their radar before. And as their business grows, they can kind of grow and incorporate some of those frameworks, so that someday they can get to, whether it's B Corp certification or just being kind of a more authentically sustainable business, whether that's with the certification or not. It can be a really great tool to just keep those things on your radar that you want to start to make practices and policies around, as you kind of get there in your business's growth and journey.
So a really important question on the governance section is that last question for everybody, that mission lock question. So can you, Alice, speak to, well, actually, first, can you speak a little bit to the difference between benefit corporation as a legal structure and B Corp certification as an independent third-party verification? And then we'll get into what it looks like in a state like Michigan that doesn't yet have benefit corporation legislation.
Sure. Yeah. So it's a really common misconception that benefit corp and B Corp certification are one and the same. A lot of times people will say, B Corp, short for benefit corp, and it's not, that's not quite right. There's a lot of overlap in many different ways in trying to ensure stakeholder accountability, but they're definitely not the same. So benefit corp legislation has been adapted in many states around the U.S., not including Michigan, yet, hopefully. That is a corporate status. So your company can incorporate as a benefit corp the way that it might incorporate as an S corp, and that really ensures legal accountability for stakeholder governance. A company that is a benefit corp does not necessarily have to be a B Corp certified company. And there are many B Corp certified companies that don't have to be or cannot be benefit corps. Benefit corp requires that a company produce a performance or an impact report at the end of each year, that utilizes a third-party tool like the BIA, but it does not have to be, there isn't necessarily a points minimum. You don't have to kind of meet the qualifications to be a B Corp. It just means that it essentially protects a business if they are taking actions to prioritize their stakeholders, the planet, their people, their community, their workforce, in addition to or over the sole kind of financial gain, and kind of centered around their shareholders. A really great example is Ben and Jerry's, and I'm sure I won't tell this story quite as well, but they essentially started working with a small brownie company, I believe, that or a bakery that worked, that was open near where they kind of headquartered or started out their ice cream business, and utilized the brownies in their mix. As Ben & Jerry's grew, they wanted to continue using that company, especially because that company was really centered hiring returning citizens. And so the social impact of it, kind of the local place-based economic impacts of Ben & Jerry's continuing to support this brownie company were really significant to them and their values. But because they didn't have kind of the legal frameworks, they were kind of in a bind as far as their growth and wanting to continue to use this brownie company. So they work to invest in the brownie company having a larger manufacturing space so that that company could keep up with the demand of Ben and Jerry's. And I believe were successfully sued at the time by their shareholders because they didn't have the legal frameworks in place to protect themselves in making that judgment and not prioritizing their shareholders and the shareholder gain in that process. And so benefit corp legislation helps a company. So when folks kind of sign on to have a share in that company, to be a part of like governing that company, they know in advance that this company is protected, legally protected, to prioritize its stakeholders in that way, as opposed to solely prioritizing financial gain for their company. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah,
So
and
that's
it
kind of an example of benefit corp versus B Corp, whereas B Corp certification is just the process that you're going through and having that third party kind of almost audit or verification come in and ensuring that you're walking the talk, that everything that you're saying in your assessment, all the answers that you're providing are in fact true, and that you have kind of the policies, procedures, kind of proof to back up that you're really doing what you're doing. That's the certification, and that lasts for 3 years before recertification is required. So they're not the same, but there are many companies where benefit corp is legal. For certain types of companies, depending on their size, they have to become benefit corps if they want to also become a B Corp certified business. That unfortunately is not an option for us in this state.
One of the exciting next chapters also for Ben and Jerry's was when they were acquired by Unilever 15 years ago, I think 2008, 2009. That benefit corporation status transferred with them. So if the Unilever shareholders wanted to exert certain influences on a new acquisition like Ben and Jerry's, because Ben and Jerry's had done the homework and formed a structure like or had revamped their governance documents to become a benefit corporation, they were sort of protected from that, which is really exciting to think about. Businesses as they grow and are acquired, oftentimes by larger entities, they can really safeguard that chunk of who they are.
Yeah, thank you for adding that. It's a great point, and that's, I think, really the language in that question of mission lock. It helps to ensure that those values and those practices, those stakeholder governance practices, are locked into the business. That they can't just be changed if ownership changes, anything like that. That's it's probably one of the most, I guess, effective succession plans that you can have. So. Yeah,
which is a huge concern for owners or founders of small businesses. How do they know? It's great if they started something with a particular set of ethos, but how do they know that that's going to be carried forth in perpetuity? I think it keeps a lot of small business owners and founders up at night.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you also have, if businesses have built built trust with their customers or clients, with their stakeholders, that they are using their business as a force for good, as we call it at Good for Michigan. And then they sell their company, or something like that happens, then those other companies can kind of leverage the trust of that brand to their benefit, even if they're not following through with the values that were initially being kind of walked through in that business. So it really is a way to kind of protect the name and everything that you are building around your business, and make sure that it's always going to have, always going to, I guess, be kind of worthy of the trust of that you've kind of built with folks that you're selling your products to. So,
not to go on too much of a side tangent, but I've definitely seen, and I'm sure you have too, the inverse happen, where it's not codified within the structure of the organization. The founder or founders sort of step away or move out of the organization entirely. And over time, a new generation of leaders kind of chips away at it, normally for cost saving reasons.
mm-hmm.
And then, a decade down the road, they realize, oh shit, we gave up our real differentiator. We're no longer values driven. We're no longer investing in our community or, giving of our time and capital. We cut all that out to try and be more financially competitive, but that's what made us who we are. That's what our community and customers depended on. And now we don't have that. We're just kind of a mid-level company competing with everybody else.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of there's a lot of growth in kind of conscious consumerism and even consumer activism. Folks that are really working to not only kind of vote with their dollar, or basically meaning that they're spending money with companies that are values aligned, but now even more folks are kind of pulling together to hold companies accountable that are hurting their stakeholders, hurting their community, hurting the environment. It's getting harder and harder with technology that everybody has to for companies to kind of hide things that they might not want to share publicly. And there's certainly nothing wrong with companies evolving and public learning, being transparent about the wins of their growth and improvement in their practices, and also the challenges. I think that does build a lot of trust, but consumers are looking for that more and more. They're wanting to support businesses that make them feel like they have kind of some control in making the world a better place. So when companies can't do that, or they can't really back that up, then that it is becoming kind of a challenge for companies that are not invested in that stakeholder centered practice.
So at a practical brass tacks level, what because Michigan businesses don't have the opportunity to either incorporate or to restructure as a benefit corporation, at least yet. Hopefully that'll change in the next couple of years. What can they do to earn those 10 points on the BAA to get that mission lock section on lock?
Yeah, there are some I think governing documents. Again, it kind of depends on the incorporation of your business. So some larger corporations are going to have to do a little bit more on kind of amending some of their governing documents. But for smaller businesses, especially S corps and LLCs, or sorry, not S corps, sole proprietorships and LLCs, even if we did have benefit corporation benefit corporation status in the state, sole proprietorships and LLCs would still not be required to be benefit corps if they didn't want to, they wanted to be B Corp certified. So really, it's kind of looking at the shape and size of your company. In our state, there's always going to be a B Corp agreement that companies get if they successfully complete the verification process. They still have their 80 points. If they are, if they can become a B Corp certified company after that, then within a few months of their kind of approval for certification, they have to complete any other necessary documents that B-Lab might issue, including the B Corp agreement, to ensure that some of those kind of stakeholder governance pieces are kind of built into the I guess for lack of a better term, the bylaws or the governing practices of your business, that's still kind of helping to root your company in its mission, without having the tools to kind of legally solidify those yet. And I think also just if there's opportunities to continue to advocate as a company for benefit corp legislation in the state of Michigan, those are also really great ways to kind of demonstrate your commitment to B-Lab, and also outwardly that you really are, working to help create more accountability for businesses in our state's economy. Which
is also a question on the community section of the BAA, I think. Yep. How do you show up for advocacy? So it sounds like you can definitely feed two birds with one stone on that one.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, I think by way of bringing it all home, Alice, how would you advise businesses that are looking at the governance section for the first time, or have already taken those questions as a baseline and looking to improve their score? what advice would you give them overall, and what would you say is the most beneficial mindset for them to approach that section of the BIA?
Yeah, I mean, I think the governance section can be one of the hardest because it's again, it's hard for it to be a one size fits all, and the assessment as a whole isn't that, but there's definitely it's harder for a sole proprietorship to have a board of advisors, right? So I think that finding ways to continue to hold yourself accountable, if that's through impact reports that you're kind of creating each year, which you can, utilize the BIA to kind of help to assess where you're at and help, pull some of that data and let folks know what you're doing. Um, Finding ways to engage in kind of your local community and your stakeholders, having those partnerships that really foster interdependence between you and other businesses, as well as kind of businesses and other entities like nonprofits or municipalities. Those kinds of opportunities are really going to, I think, stand out in the governance section for smaller and mid-sized companies, where they might not be at a space where a formal board is something that they can kind of house at that time, but working in those collaborative spaces and having some more kind of formal agreements can, like MOUs and things like that, can help to demonstrate that you are holding you're allowing yourself to be held accountable. I think oftentimes folks, good impact, and not to like say, there's a difference between good impacts and good and or good intentions, right? And good intentions are awesome and definitely the starting point, but intentions are not synonymous with impacts. So really thinking about ways, if your business is really doing great things or you feel like it is, how are you kind of holding yourself accountable? How are you allowing other people to kind of speak into the ways that you impact their communities as well? That's going to be kind of at the core focus. And again, it's definitely okay to ask for help, to reach out to me or reach out to you, Nick, or even B Lab directly, or other B Corps that you want to learn more from about more innovative ways to kind of build in that accountability. Like I said, I really love your idea of kind of working collaboratively with other folks in this space around the country, and finding ways to hold each other accountable and kind of grow from and with each other. Don't be afraid to kind of innovate a little bit, and the just because the language there don't feel like that language there has to be exactly literal to your business. It's okay to think about things that you are doing that maybe aren't specifically stated in each assessment question, and enter them into the kind of notes or added areas within each assessment question where it allows you to kind of answer open-endedly. Those are there for a reason. They are read by B Lab, and they're really there to help people be able to speak to the unique ways that they operate their unique businesses, and utilize them for as a force for good.
I don't think we're going to do any better than that, Alice. I think that's where we ought to leave it for today. Thank you so much for the time and guidance on the governance section, and just more broadly for all the work you and your team do, not just within our state, but I know y'all participate in that broader B Corp community. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Just we're excited for you, and let us know if we can do anything else to help. Anybody who is interested in learning more about B Corp or Good for Michigan, or what is it all about, feel free to reach out or check out our website at goodfor.org. And yeah, we'd be happy to help you utilize these tools to create your own tailored roadmap for your sustainability journey. So
Awesome. All right. Talk to you soon.
good luck.